Yeah, the countdown. It said ready,
Yeah.
set, boom. Austin, welcome back.
Thanks,
Has
Jim.
it?
Good to be here once again.
Yeah. Has it been a year?
Mm, no, I've been at my current job since May of 2024 and left. So I left my previous job January of 2024. Yep.
Oh wow, so you've been there a year already.
Yep. I've been at my new planning position for a year and a couple of months. It was a year in May.
Okay. All
It's
right.
crazy.
Yeah. So I was thinking it was like your 1 year plan anniversary, but it's probably
Just
closer
missed
to
it.
two
That was in
years.
May. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yep. I
That's
got
fun.
1 year at the new place. Well, over a year now. I just got my promotion to planner two. Um, that was just a couple weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Thanks. It's exciting.
N- Nice. Um, how's it been, the transition? Because you're in Pennsylvania now.
Uh-huh.
Different uh different work, different law, um,
Hmm.
different culture.
Sure, sure. Well, I'm back in my old stomping ground since I'm from PA, and I think the transition back was more of like a breath of fresh air. Definitely, the culture of the planning office up here is much more transit oriented. I don't feel like the weird one for coming in on Sunrail and everyone's like, don't you have a car? Whereas up here in the Philly area, uh, my coworkers, we try to carpool or take transit together, and at lunch we can go walk to get food, and very different experience when you plan in a region where that is what people are used to versus driving everywhere where all the planners are used to that.
So what are you working on these days?
Right now, I'm working on the comprehensive plan for 2050.
Nice. Is that most of your is it most of your work? Like, do you is that sort of the team that you're on, or are you doing other things outside of the comp plan?
I do. I work with a team of four of us. We're working on the 2050 plan, and other things that I do are a lot of statistical data work, monitoring development patterns and trends, population patterns and trends, construction, inventory of construction of different kinds of development, residential, uh, uh, commercial, and business parks and things of that nature. Um, it's very data heavy position, data driven, not nearly as much transit or transportation work as I would like in this position. But I knew that coming in as my first planning role at the organization, and um, we all start somewhere, as they say.
Are you doing any um, like site plan review, any permitting? I don't. I guess tell us about the department. Like, is it small? Is it big? How many people are there? Like, how are the teams divided up?
Okay, so how big is the office? It's a big office. We have a staff of about 35 planners and maybe five support staff, maybe in there a couple of GIS full-time GIS staff, and it's a really big, busy environment. In terms of development review, we do some limited development review, more general, uh, and the specific, since I'm at the county level, the specific municipalities do the more detailed, granular level of the development review in accordance with their own like ordinances, their subdivision and land development ordinances and things like that. But in a county planning position, it's much more um, just checking the broader perspective of how it fits in with the local comprehensive plan and the county comprehensive plan, looking at land use, future land use consistency, and
Mhm.
making recommendations on any changes more in terms of relations to the comp plan and rather than like a subdivision and land development ordinance.
So, does each town and borough within the county uh, do they do their own planning? Like, are you guys acting as almost like a regional planning agency?
In Pennsylvania, the specific municipal governments do their own development review and can do their own planning. But for the smaller municipalities, they often look to the county for planning guidance, planning services, and they can contract with the county um, and do uh, like hire a planner from the county or from the private sector to do planning functions.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
And in
Um,
Pennsylvania, the counties are advisory only. The municipal governments make all of their own planning decisions. Their boards, um, their governing bodies do all their planning decisions at the local level.
yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Um, yeah. So it is almost like it's kind of like the regional planning commissions here, which the state's trying to get rid of, because they are kind of redundant now. They were they were set up back in the 70s or 80s to handle the developments of regional impacts, the sort of subdivisions that were so big that they crossed county lines. Um, and they were doing all of the, I mean, they still are really, but they're doing all of the data, a lot of the data and analysis that you would want to get at the county level or at the city level if you were, you know, you're putting your comp plan together, because you want to make those regional comparisons in your comprehensive plan. So yeah, yeah, that's interesting. It's also interesting how that fits in with the actual regional planning commission in Philly, because I worked there a long time ago, and that was a lot of similar work. I would say maybe more like regionally oriented instead of specific to one county. But yeah, yeah, that's interesting. So you're enjoying your work there, enjoying the
Is that
environment.
is that what I said?
Um,
I gotta remember saying that. No, it's it's interesting. So I don't know how to describe it. There's parts that I really enjoy and there's parts that are not so fun. But I guess that's like with any job. One thing I really like about uh planning in my current role is talking to people. Like developing the comp plan is really intense. It is really, really intense backbreaking work. And some of the things that I like are talking to people and trying to decode their NIMBYism and turn it into something that can be constructive and useful in the comp plan.
so you guys are doing a lot of that kind of field work to find out what
Public
the yeah.
outreach field work
Mhm.
going across the county and talking to residents and business owners in different open forums. Like we've done some pop-up events where we were showing up at different um, festivals and like concert venues or car shows, things of that nature. We didn't do a car show, but like little community fairs. And we just set up a tent and table, and we had, of course, our like poster boards with different questions about different issues in daily life, like transportation options and um, development and open space and the trail system, parks and recreation, and just asking people how do they feel about different things. And they had sticker dots that they could put on the posters, and it just opened up lots of different conversations, and it was fun to see the residents kind of like talking to each other at the boards and like hearing what they were saying, like where what part of the county that they live in, and favorite stores to shop at or restaurants. Like it's just fun. I really like that part best.
If if that's the kind of work that you're doing, do you guys even have a planner of the day? Planner on
No,
call,
we
whatever.
don't have a planner of the day. I don't
You
know,
got so
like
lucky.
I know what that is because in Florida we that was like a normal thing to have a planner of the day.
Yeah.
It's not a
Hmm.
thing in our office. That might be
Yeah.
maybe because our office is so large. I don't know.
Well, you're not either there's an admin taking the calls and directing them, or because if you're not dealing with permitting on any level, then you're not really going to get many of those calls to begin with, and there would be no reason to have it. I mean, most of the time that we get calls to long range planning, it doesn't have anything to do with the comp plan. It's people calling the wrong number, and that, you know, oh, I need a permit for a new shed in my backyard. Let me call planning. um, and then we have to explain that, we work on the 30-year plan. We don't we don't issue shed permits or fence permits or whatever, the like run of the mill stuff that's over the counter. uh, yeah, I mean, a lot of places are shifting to doing that stuff online, where you just apply for the permit and it's DIY, and you pay $40 or whatever, and you get the permit, and then maybe someone comes and inspects afterwards. But it's
Mhm.
like just to tamp down on the call volume. It's a lot. You were talking about what you liked, um, but what is it? I guess what is it that you either don't like or you feel is amiss for uh, the way that you guys are running your comp plan review?
I guess I also that's not the only thing I like though. I really like the
Okay.
collaboration. We're very
Yeah.
collaborative. I
Hmm.
like working with other planners um who have been doing this for years and years and learning from them. I really enjoy that. I think our camaraderie is a positive thing too. Um, like we will like once a week we usually have like a group lunch if it's nice outside. We'll eat outside. Like there's like things like that that are great. And we have some interns that are over here for the summer, and it feels weird to have like to now be on like the other side because I interned at this organization and now I'm the planner who's got a more than a year of experience, and I'm a planner too now, and they're like asking me questions, and it just feels really weird and gratifying at the same time, and kind of a reminder of how much I learned in my first year. But in terms of what I don't like, I think in my current role, I think the data crunching is is it can be overwhelming because it's like, where does it end? I have to research and update our our like stats of the population in the county, like all of the census stuff, average incomes and median incomes and per capita incomes. Like it's just the breakdown is just so that the minutia is so intense. It feels like the racial composition of the county and the different kinds of development. We just have all of these publications where we are very public facing, and I write them, I write
Yeah.
them and they have
Yeah.
pictures, and that part I wish were not so intense. But that's a big part of my job.
Everywhere I've worked so far in Florida, the that data and analysis section of the comp plan is is outsourced. It's contracted out, because it's so tedious. But then also, I think that we don't. Where I work now, we sort of have a team that's dedicated to that sort of data. but it's small. You know, it's 3 people. Um, you can also pull a lot of that data from Metro Plan Orlando or the East Central Florida Regional Planning Commission. But just because you can get the raw data doesn't mean that it's put together in the format that you need. Um, so yeah, it usually gets outsourced. But I mean, it's cool that you guys are doing it because that like career wise, I think that's I don't know, maybe not for you because you're not so interested in it, but like it's good to have that experience because you're not, unless you're in the private sector doing it on a contract, you're not going to get that experience anywhere else. And um it's important to know because like I mean everything that we do needs to revolve around the data. Otherwise, why are we doing it? If you can't support its usefulness, then what's uh, you know, I don't I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
At, at UCF, at UCF, there was planning methods, and I took that was the last course that I took before capstone, and that's the
Mm.
course where you learn all of the research, how to do how to do research and how to like make spreadsheets with all the numbers and stuff. And classmates were like, I was like 2 years in and about to graduate, and they're like, "How have you not taken planning methods yet?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just I just didn't." And I that was my least favorite class. It's my least favorite class. I was like, I'm so glad that it's over because there's no way planners do this in real life.
Surprise. Yeah, actually, good segue there. Speaking of UCF, super commuting. Are you happy to be done with it? I
Yes, I am.
you kind of got to tell this story from the beginning though. Um, your your job change, but not changing schools and graduating and
It's like where do I even begin?
so you were working in Orlando and you got a job in the Philly area.
uh,
Yeah.
yes, and okay, we'll start there. I
Mhm.
was in as I was wrapping up grad school at UCF's planning program. I was very eager and determined to move back home. I was very eager and determined to move back home, and I was very afraid of taking another position somewhere in Central Florida and getting permanently trapped in Florida. That's not where I wanted to be. So I was applying to jobs back in the Northeast. And the previous summer, I had done my internship um, in the Philly area. Gave me a call and said, "Hey, we got your application." And they were a little bit confused because at the end of the internship, everyone knew they were like, there was like this big celebration. Our intern got hired, you know, um, his first planning job in Central Florida. It was it was really exciting. And now they have an application from me. They're all like, the manager who called me, I had worked with through my internship. Her first reaction was like, "What happened?" um, so I explained that my first job was a really bad experience, and they were really sorry to hear that because as an intern, it was an awesome internship. I got a lot of hands-on experience working with the planners, and I just did really great, made a lot of connections. So they were like, "We'd love to have you back. We'd love to hire you, but there's a couple issues. One is you need a master's degree for this job, and you are 12 months away from graduating. And the other issue is you are in Orlando, and we're in Pennsylvania. How this is not a remote position. How are we going to make this work?" And the interview went well, and they were very transparent and said, because you don't have the you don't meet the minimum experience requirements, um, and because of your availability right now, we do have to offer it to we have another candidate who's qualified that we're going to make an offer to. But they said if there's any issues with that or they don't accept the offer, we'll let you know. And like a week or two later, they called me back and said that the person they offered the position to turned it down. And this door is open again. Let's talk about a way that we could possibly maybe make this work. Um, and I was like, I don't know how we'll make it work, and they didn't either. But they had a hybrid work schedule where you have to be in the office 2 days a week. They said if we can find a way to work this Orlando thing out, they said we will, but we have to talk about how to make it work. So I didn't know my class schedule at the time, and I still had 12 more months to graduate. So I said, you know, I find out my class schedule like in a month for the next semester, 2 more semesters. And I said, as soon as I find out my class schedule, then we'll know if I could fly back and forth. I was thinking, I had no idea how it would work because let's say if there were night classes, what if I had class on like a Monday night and a Wednesday night? I got the class schedule, and when I got the class schedule, the classes they were like Monday and Tuesday nights, which would mean, they're right next to each other, and it could work if I were like to fly back on like a Wednesday and I could do like work there Thursday and Friday in the office or something. And I was like, oh no, this might actually work. And I didn't. I gave them the date that I would find out my class schedule, and that was the date that it was posted online, like when the classes would be offered. And I was so overwhelmed at the thought of actually this might work that I didn't reach back out because I was still thinking of like maybe I like do I really want to like move further with this because I can't believe that this could actually work. And they emailed me like that day and said, "Do you know your class schedule?" Like I was like, "Oh my gosh, dude." I was like thinking it would just blow over. They were like, "No, like we're following up. Do you know your class schedule? And could this be something that we could pursue?" And I shared my class schedule and was like, I think it was like Monday and Tuesday nights. I think that was it. And they were like, okay, this could work out now. And what do the flights look like? They were like still interested. Um, and between Philly and Orlando, there's like multiple flights per day.
There are a lot of
And
flights. It's
there's
like it's
budget
like
airlines.
yeah, it's like when you put them all together, there's a flight like every 20 minutes from Orlando to
Mhm.
Philly. It's pretty ridiculous. Yeah.
So they have budget airlines between Frontier and Spirit if you dare, that are like $50 a flight. So I showed the flight schedule and I proposed um, flying back and forth and staying with my parents where they live in the Philly area, and keeping my apartment where I was in Orlando. And I was like, I just pitched a proposal, and that they basically told me, you know, we don't know what HR is going to say, but we'd like to recommend you for the position. But they said we can't make any guarantees. They said management in our department's going to recommend that you be hired, but just an FYI, we don't know. We can't make any guarantees. They were very transparent, which I really appreciate. They called me back about like a month later because they did like check in and say they're still they're still trying to work it out. It was not a quick thing, but they eventually did contact me and they made me an offer, and I accepted the offer and was like, you know, oh crap, now I gotta actually do this. And I I that's what I did. I stayed true to my word and flew back and forth like sometimes as much as once a week between Philly and Orlando. Um, working in the office, doing my 2 days a week, staying committed to the 2 days. Um, I would like fly back after class. Um, Here's how I did it. I would um, sometimes leave the office, go straight to the airport, and then fly to the airport that evening. And then I would work remotely in my apartment in Orlando, and then go to class that evening, and then stay the night, work again the next day remotely, go to class that evening, and then fly out the following day, and then do my 2 days in the office. But then in my final semester, I only had one class. Um, and I gave up my apartment for my last semester. So on I would fly in, either take a half day at the office, fly down, get to the airport, and then I would take I would take links to Sunrail from Orlando Airport, go to UCF, do the night classes downtown, and then class was 6 to 9 p.m. After class, I would take links and Sunrail back to the airport, spend the night at the airport, and fly back north on the first flight the next day, which was Thursday morning. There was always like a 4:50 a.m. flight that I would take back to work, land in Philly, then get on the train from Philly International back to the office and go straight to work.
I, dude, I couldn't. I mean, that's an all nighter, right? You're up
Uh-huh.
for like
I didn't
40
sleep on
hours.
Wednesday nights. Yeah.
Oh
I didn't
no,
sleep on Wednesday nights for like
mm-mm,
15 weeks.
no. That's tough, man. Um, so like the thing that I found most fascinating is that you got that deal with Frontier and like it actually worked. Did you get bumped from flights very often?
So I at first, so Frontier has this thing called the Go Wild All You Can Fly Pass.
Go wild.
And at first I didn't put my trust in that because of all the terms and conditions that it entails. I didn't want to say, hey, like when I was being considered for the position, Frontier has this pass and I'll always be able to fly up for like $15. Um, so that was something kind of I entertained later when I wanted to save some money and see if I could make it work. So this pass, the way it works is, and it has this following on Facebook of the hardcore go wild people. The pass has these terms and conditions. So you get unlimited flights for a penny, and you only pay the taxes and fees for the airport, which depending on where you go, between Philly and Orlando, it's always like $15 or $16. The catch is it only covers your flight for the next calendar day. So in order to make it work, for example, let's say today is Sunday. If I wanted to take a flight on Tuesday, I would wait until midnight tonight. So it's 12:01 a.m. on Monday. Then you have 24 hours of booking time for your next calendar day for your flight on Tuesday. Because you want to
Right.
do it at midnight because that's when all of the Go Wild pass holders get first dibs. So with this pass, um, it made it like almost effortless to fly back and forth for $15 on Frontier. And I never had any issues with it doing it that way. There are blackout dates to be mindful of, and
Mhm.
all the like the diehards have them like in their phone and everything, so you know when to book and when you can't. So I just planned around that. But it was awesome, and I was able to totally drain the system.
That's so crazy. Like, and you did that for a year, right? In total? So it was
Yeah,
like once a week for a year, basically, and you were paying
yeah.
what, like 150? something a month to go back and forth? Is that
Let's see. It was like,
because you have to
yeah,
pay for the
about yeah.
pass, right?
The pass is regular retail for the pass is $600, like
Okay,
$599 plus tax.
for the
But I got it
year.
on sale, yeah, for 12 months.
Yeah.
But I got it on sale for half price. So, and it was the window, the 12 months was from May to May because they sell it. They don't, it's not like a transit pass where it's like from the
Yeah.
date you bought or whatever. It
Right.
runs May to May. So it was freakishly convenient because I got hired in May and I graduated the following May.
Yeah, and it's a good thing that you're like that you graduated in like this May with the SEPTA cuts coming up because that would have been, is the airport line one of the ones that may get cut or will get cut at least temporarily? I feel like we've
Service,
sorry, in the last
yeah.
20 to the airport on
It will get
the old
it will
R1.
get so all the regional rail lines will be on like a 9 p.m. curfew is what's proposed.
Yeah.
So if you fly in late from the airport or to the
But
airport, or
but
yeah,
wait, isn't like aren't they cutting Trenton and Doylestown or sorry, Trenton and Downingtown completely?
Trenton, the Trenton line and the Paoli
Paoli
Thorndale.
Thorndale. Yeah.
Mhm. Those are proposed to be cut. Also, I think Wilmington,
Yeah, because they're Amtrak, they're leased from Amtrak.
all the lines that
Yeah.
are leased from Amtrak. Yep.
When I worked for the city of Chester, I used to take the R2 home, the Wilmington line home every day, um, from Chester to or to Market East, and then I would have to get on Patco to get back over to Collingswood, and um, yeah, we that train was always late coming back because we had to pause just south of University City, which they've also changed the name of now to whatever Penn
Yeah,
Medicine, right?
everything's
Um,
changed.
it's so stupid. Yeah, we had to stop in between where the airport line comes in. I don't know what that junction's called in rail terminology, but right in between where the airport line come like joins the main line, and then from there up to Spruce Street, where University City Station is. Um, and Yeah, we had to hold there, and sometimes it was like 10 minutes because we were waiting for an Acela train to pass. So if the Acela train was late, then we were late, which was like almost every day. But it's also actually really silly because you've they're making those SEPTA trains cross the entire main line to get to the upper level of 30th Street. Um, so like instead of a flyover that takes you up and over, the train's like slowly crossing like six sets of tracks. It's ridiculous.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, sorry. Anyway, yeah, I mean those cuts are going to be wild, and it would have made that whole your whole adventure of the last year like a lot more difficult, if not impossible.
Yeah, with reduced service for sure. Because I used, I guess that's the other really interesting thing about this is to do the super commute between my job in Philly and my job and my classes in Orlando. I used transit like 100%. I never really had to get in a car between taking the train to Philly Airport, Philly International, and flying to Orlando from MCO. I would take links to Sunrail and Sunrail to downtown Orlando for class. And yeah, doing that was my transit's my preferred way to get around. I feel like if I had to drive, and I've never driven to Philadelphia International Airport ever, I would have to
Yeah,
learn how to do it.
it's not fun. it's not. It's not a great setup. With the I mean there are very few airports where driving is fun. it's just it's just chaos usually everywhere all the time. Um, yeah, I just in the over the last, I would say 25, 26 years, whatever, I feel like this scenario where SEPTA comes up with a doomsday budget has happened 3 times. This is the third time now that I remember. Um, so it's like every like once a decade, I guess. Um,
Cyclical.
yeah, and but I mean, to be fair, it's not just SEPTA, and it never has been just SEPTA. It's just that that's like I know it's also happening in Pittsburgh. You know, uh, Allentown's going to have to
Yeah.
deal with that as well. Like it's transit funding statewide. That's the issue, and it seems like a convenient political football. Like you wouldn't want to solve the problem permanently when you can keep using it as like a wedge issue, um, which is yeah, it's really frustrating. But then to be fair, New Jersey hasn't solved that problem either. And they don't really have an excuse not to. Like they've made all these temporary fixes where they've started funneling revenue from the toll roads into New Jersey Transit, which is great, right? But it's there's still a shortfall, and they haven't fixed it. It's like year to year. There's no, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about this. Like you need a permanent funding solution, but also the transit agencies need to get way better um, at waste. You know what I mean? Like the capital, the capital programs, like a lot of that stuff should not be nearly as expensive as it is. Like there's
Mhm.
just so much money just disappearing into black holes. Um, and yeah, and even operations, like I don't know, we can get into it or not, but like 20 years ago, I was looking at things that SEPTA was doing just as a matter of custom that didn't seem to make sense. Like, you know how like so much of the regional rail system is low level platforms,
Yeah. Yeah,
and,
for
and
sure.
and they're chewing up time at every station because people have to come down the stairs, and then you've got to wait until everyone's off, and then everybody's got to climb up the stairs, and
Mhm.
you're talking 5 seconds per passenger. And when you're spreading that out over thousands of passengers per route, if like if there's a train running from uh Glenside to the airport, you know what I mean? Like people have luggage, that makes it even worse. um
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
it's
Tell me
it's like,
about it.
yeah, the right. It's like the platforms, yeah, they cost money up front, but you're talking about when you're talking about like 4 minutes per trip of time savings, and sometimes more, times 30 trains a day. Do you know what I mean? That's a whole train or two per day from the schedule that you don't need because you can turn the trains around quicker. Um, and yeah, that is upfront capital cost, but there's never been like a long term strategy that I've seen to fix that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you spend capital money to lower your operations budgets. I guess
Mhm.
that's where I was going with that. um, but yeah, I think um, yeah, like on that, we were talking about transit tangents earlier, and they had that they did an episode. They did 2 episodes on Philly actually, and one where they were talking about the SEPTA cuts. And um, one of the things that came up as like a glimmer of hope was that the new the new manager, the new GM for SEPTA, came from the trolley division. Like they were an operator, right?
Mhm.
And I don't. Maybe that makes someone a good manager. Maybe I don't know. Like I wouldn't put any faith in that Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like sometimes when people come, like their career started in these institutions, they don't see anything but the institution, right? It's like, well, this is the way that we've always done things. Why would we change it? And they're less concerned about like global best practices. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know if you have any if you have any thoughts on that. You
Well,
probably
I'm thinking
you're
about, you mentioned the dwell times,
yeah,
and those are a big deal with commuter rail. And one of the biggest things I noticed when I moved to Orlando is how long Sunrail's dwell times are.
yeah, ridiculous. Yep.
Like the trains just they just sit at the station, and often that's holding up traffic, which is longer than necessary, which isn't a good look for transit, like becoming more of an accepted presence in a region that's unfamiliar with transit. Like we hate the train because the
Yeah.
gates go down and it just sits there forever.
Right. Well, especially on the northern half of the line where there's basically no grade separation. The southern half of the line, there's a lot more grade separation.
Mm,
But yeah, yeah,
mm.
you're right. It's it's terrible, and part of that is the double decker cars. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and that and they don't have level boarding on the ground floor.
You have to
On the
step up.
lower level. Yep, you have to step up. It's not that bad, but it's I think that's because of the freight traffic.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, I I don't know what the answer there is, but
It's just
but
like, have you
yeah,
noticed too? I know you have the usually with transit, people get off before people get on, but because of Sunrail's design, it takes so long for the people to come downstairs from the upper level, um, that people just bum rush the train, and
mm,
then you're at the stairs, people are coming down, and it's
yeah,
just kind of chaos.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's unnecessary. Like they could, yeah, they could definitely sort of. You've got a lot of people who don't have no experience with transit other than Sunrail, um,
Uh,
and don't really understand. There's no culture or etiquette around it. So people will wait until the train comes to a complete stop before they
before
start
they
getting
even
their
get
stuff
up.
together. Yeah, yeah. Like like it's Amtrak. um, but even on Amtrak, they make announcements like start getting your stuff together like
Uh-huh.
10 or
Be ready
15
to
minutes
be
before
bored.
your stop. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, that's I don't know.
And there's no
Speaking of
luggage racks on Sunrail. There's no luggage racks.
true, but if you have luggage, you should not be going up to the upper level.
There's no
There
luggage racks on the lower level either.
that's true. That's true.
There's none
But
anywhere.
there are um some what's the term? The horizontal seating, right? Is that right? Where it's you're facing the aisle, and
Okay.
and that's the point, like that there's more room in front of you for like a big bag, and there are some seats that face forward where there are no seats in front of them. That's like the bike
Hmm.
storage area. Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, there's a lot that Sunrail could do to reconfigure the lower levels of those cars, or at least one of the cars where it's more bike friendly and more friendly to people with luggage. And they're going to have to do that for um, once the trains start going to the airport. Um,
Yes.
yeah. And I guess that's another interesting topic, the Sunshine Corridor.
I
So,
don't like how the seats face each other on Sunrail. That was a shocker too, because
oh, with the tables upstairs.
and
Yeah.
just facing each other like throughout the train, you'd like sit across from a stranger. I'm
Yeah.
used to everyone sitting facing forward or backward.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess a lot of seat configurations on trains do have a mix of forward and backwards. So not everyone. I don't know. Some people get motion sickness when they're
Yeah,
facing backwards. But like the older New Jersey Transit trains, the seats. Actually, I think that was on SEPTA too, where you could flip the seats.
you could
Uh,
flip it in the older on the old ones.
yeah,
That sense been long gone. But
right.
like
Yeah,
I'm used to like a movie theater where like everyone faces the same
yeah,
direction.
right. Yeah,
That was really hard to get used to.
yeah, yeah. On those older trains, especially like where I grew up, there was a loop where the trains would turn around. Like, they wouldn't just like turn the train, the whole train would go around the loop and head back with the locomotive in front, at Bayhead. But but at the other end of the line, the conductors would flip the seats just by walking
Hmm.
through the train and pushing with
Pushing
their
it.
hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, pushing the seats, so that they were facing in the other direction. But yeah, I don't. Um, but yeah, so I guess first of all, um, Brightline, Brightline, Sunrail. We'll get to Brightline in a minute, but Sunrail did a study for weekend service. Said it would cost 28 million for the year. Looks like they're serious about it, but where they're going to come up with that money, um, is because I think their regular operations budget is something like 100 million, or 100 million and 120 million or something like that, and that funding source is still kind of iffy. That hasn't really been nailed down, but um, it's just an interesting juxtaposition where here where transit's not nearly as important, there's a conversation about expanding service. And then in Philly, where it's extremely important, to the local economy, there's all this talk of basically sabotaging it, um, on on purpose. It would seem, but yeah, I mean, I don't. A lot of people say that they want to use Sunrail on the weekends, and like if you're a regular user, yes, it would be very valuable. But I feel like right now, for destination travel, like it's going to be useful to people who are working retail, or in the service industry on the weekends, because you still need to get to work on Saturday and Sunday. That's probably like the busiest part of the schedule. But for sort of that casual travel that I think Sunrail thinks it's going to attract, I don't see it, because that your destinations are limited. Do you know what I'm saying? You've got Winter Park, you've got downtown, and then almost every other station except for Kissimmee is a park and ride.
Like park and ride.
Yeah, Sand Lake is useful for getting to the airport, especially now that they fixed the bus schedule. There's a bus almost every 10 or 12 minutes now. Um,
Yep. Their train
so
to plane campaign.
yeah, yeah, it works. I like it. But yeah, until the Sunshine Corridor gets through, and I don't. To me, when I'm reading everything, it looks like Sunrail to the airport is still 3 to 5 years away, at least. Which sucks because the tracks are there now, and the city of Orlando owns them, so there's no reason that they couldn't be rehabbed and you could put new signaling in, and for relatively cheaply get service to the airport. And that's a huge bank of riders, like a lot of pent up demand there, and not just for getting to the airport itself, but for getting to Brightline. I don't know how much time that would have saved you. Probably about 20 minutes getting from UCF downtown to the airport. But you're going to attract a lot of people who are wary of a two-seat ride, or who just don't want to, who are not transit dependent or who are not visiting here, and are just like, well, why would I do that if I can just get someone to drop me off? The Sunrail corridor has a long way to go in terms of creating destinations. Um, and it's kind of a bummer. I found this article recently. I didn't share it with you, but Maitland, and this was 10 years ago, Maitland was telling Sunrail, no, the station's in the wrong place. You need to move it closer to the core of our downtown. You can't have it up there on the highway because, you're like, you're shooting us in the foot and you're shooting yourselves in the foot because this is where we want all of the activity. Right by Maitland City Hall, essentially, is where the city was saying that they wanted it. But they didn't. They put it up on 414. So it's like parking oriented transit. you
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
yeah, transit for people with cars.
Right. Right. Yeah. Touching on that, the Sunshine Corridor, and I guess I'll put it up on the screen, but they started the PD&E for that, which they used to call preliminary design and engineering, but now it's project development and environment. So I don't know why they changed the name of it, but anyway, the study's happening. It's going to take 3 years, but I think Sunrail can't get to the airport before that PD&E study's done because they don't know what they're going to have to build for Sunrail, what kind of flyover, what kind of like track configuration they're going to have. Um, and the other interesting part is that Brightline is still trying to get to Tampa using that Sunshine Corridor. They are looking at like a $500 million uh, budget deficit. Like their debt is enormous, and they have decent operations revenue, but it's not nearly enough to cover their capital debt for building the line in the first place. Like it's billions of dollars. Um, and I mean everybody knows this, that it's not, you're not going to turn a profit on selling tickets. Like even the airlines don't turn a profit on selling tickets. That the profit is in their credit cards and all the snacks that they're selling on the plane and all the other nonsense. But yeah, so Brightline went to Tampa asking for essentially asking for Tampa to guarantee $400 billion in muni bonds so that they could build out the Tampa to Orlando portion. But I don't understand how that's going to work because um, let's see, how can I explain this? So the PD&E for the Sunshine Corridor, which is only going from the airport to Disney Springs via the convention center, by the time the PD&E is done, 3 years from now, whatever, you're still talking about 3 or 4 years until construction's finished. So you're talking like 7 years from now that'll be up and running. So what are they going to do between now and then? Are they going to start building the Tampa portion of the line to Disney Springs, so that they open at the same time? Like I don't know. It's hard to tell what their plan is or what they plan on doing with that 400 billion because it doesn't seem like it's enough to build the entire, even to get from Disney Springs to Tampa, because they're talking about 150 miles an hour. Um, I don't you, to to have trains going that fast. You need catenary, and it seems like just that alone, with the catenary and the substations and everything else, just that would cost 400 billion. Um, and it costs them way more money to build the existing line just from West Palm Beach to Orlando. And I mean, I know it's longer, but they already had most of that. The only new right of way was along 528, which is only like 25 miles long, something like that. So, did you ever take the train from Orlando to Tampa while you were here? Amtrak, I mean.
Um, I have, yes, I did. I did do that once.
And didn't to Miami once too, maybe, right?
I've taken, yes, Amtrak to Tampa. I've taken Amtrak to Miami as well as Brightline to Miami. And I got off once at a couple times at West Palm Beach and walked to the beach.
Nice. Yeah. Because all the conversations here, like in the local media, and even just local officials, seem to be oblivious to the fact that there's already a service from Orlando to Tampa, right? Like
Right? I
the
totally agree. It's like they don't know.
and the problem isn't that it's pretty competitive time wise with driving. Like when you consider the traffic and just the unpredictability of what that drive is going to be like. The problem is that there's only one round trip per day. I mean, if there were four round trips a day, that would completely change the game. And I mean, 8 round trips would be amazing. It would also be really easy to speed up those trip times too. You wouldn't have to spend a ton of money. You need one or two flyovers, and um, you need a pretty minimal amount of double tracking. There's only a few single track sections, like when you're between Lakeland and Kissimmee, that would need to be double tracked. It's not like the entire, a good portion of the line is already double tracked. Is what I'm saying. So it's not it to get those trains going faster and to like minimize delays. It's not a lot of work. And not that high speed rail wouldn't be better. It's just, do we need to spend $2 billion to build a parallel route rather than improving the route that already exists? Right. Because if the goal is to link Tampa with Disney Springs, just build a spur. Because the existing rail line, the Amtrak, I guess CSX owns it, but that existing route comes really close to I-4, right before in Osceola County. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. It wouldn't be that expensive. It would certainly be cheaper than building an entirely new line to connect the Sunshine Corridor with the existing Amtrak route, maybe 3 miles south of where they're saying they're going to end the Sunshine Corridor. Yeah, I don't like that right of way, and on I-4 exists for the entire route and is specifically there for rail. So it's not, yeah, it's just strange. But I mean, this is this is Florida, so you're not going to get state supported Amtrak. It's just not going to happen. Um,
And it's unfortunate too because more rail in Florida would be such a game changer. It's like Florida has such a big population of seniors, like older residents, and it's such a car dependent, car oriented region. It's like there's so many reasons to invest in rail and public transit that just makes the region easier to get around. But I mean, that was the biggest. I had never lived in the Sun Belt before moving to Orlando, and that was an enormous adjustment for me to be in a region where there's very few options and only a few different corridors that have reliable or frequent service. Like getting from the airport to downtown was was feasible. Like that was reliable and easy to do. But most of Orlando, the Orlando region, taking transit around is very, very inconvenient, and unpleasant. And the land use patterns around transit are such that waiting for transit is just never ideal. You're on the side of at every intersection that's 10 lanes wide between wedged between that the traffic noise and an enormous parking lot to your big box stores.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's pretty miserable for a huge part of the region, and just because it's so sprawling, like there you see a lot of bus shelters in the city, like in Orlando and in Winter Park because they pay for them. But outside of that, you don't. It's just a lollipop, right? It's just the stick with the circle, and sometimes like the number of the route is not even on the, it's a really small print on the back of the sign, so you can't even see it when you're looking at, like when you're facing it, you've got to walk around the back to see what bus stops there. um yeah, it's pretty terrible. And I mean, I appreciate that, a lot of the especially with links, like a lot of the services move to an app, but you can't assume that everyone knows that a, that the app exists, or b, is going to be able to use it. And then see that, especially a place like this where you're talking like 75, 80 million visitors a year, that everyone's going to want to download a new app every time they go to another city. Like they're just here for a couple of days. You've got to, yeah, you got to acknowledge that. um okay. Did you watch the Uber fixed route video with with Classy Whale and Tom from Trains Are Awesome? um so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I'll just say this: that when I was living and working in San Francisco, there was this company called Chariot, which is basically just like a Ford, as in the automaker. They set it up, um, and they stocked it with their vans. It's the Econoline van. They have like those. You see those vans all the time now. They're like, they can be set up to be 15 passenger vans, and they've got a high roof and everything, so you can stand up in it. Um, they were using those, and they were running fixed routes in San Francisco. And I want to say the service lasted like 18 months, maybe only a year, before it just fell apart, because you you can't reinvent the bus. It's um, you you can't, you're not, because you're not offering your, whatever premium you think you're offering is taken away by the increased price and the reduced frequency. So it's like, all right, you're going to charge me like three times what I would pay on the bus, but you only come every half hour or every 20 minutes instead of every 7 minutes. You know, I don't, I don't know. I've got a lot of opinions about the sort of business model of Uber and Lyft, having been on the inside for a little bit.
They compared it to, which was interesting, they compared it to the los colectivos in like Latin America. Like when I
Yeah,
went
yeah.
to Buenos Aires, Buenos Aires
Mhm.
has an enormous like network of small buses that are called locally, they call them colectivos. And it was really in- it was the network was so complex that they didn't have paper schedules and you couldn't look up your route online. You had to use the app, and it would just, you put in your origin and your destination and it would plug in which routes would work for you. I had never been to a city like that. There were just too many routes to make a map, or to have, they probably have
Yeah.
hundreds of maps. It was incredible. And it came
And
so quickly, like every few minutes. It just, and they move so fast. It would just fly up and pick you up.
it was high frequency.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
incredible. And Buenos
I,
Aires has
I
a lot of trains and metros too.
Yeah, I know there was something similar in South Africa, like in Johannesburg. And
Mhm.
when they introduced BRT to Johannesburg, all of the, I forget what they call the little buses. They're like microbuses, but the drivers rioted for like weeks and months, like lighting the BRT buses on fire, um, because it was so destructive to their model, which which is interesting, that like, a, these things exist where civil society doesn't, like where government doesn't. Do you know what I mean? Like there's just not the money to provide the infrastructure, to have this sort of holistic integrated system. um, but also that the market is stepping in to fill the void because there obviously is one. But I think in this scenario where they're trying to run these services in San Francisco or in Philly, the goal is not to provide a service that doesn't already exist. The goal is to undercut the existing service. It's essentially rent seeking. Like there there's no profit in their business model. Like Uber didn't make any money until they started delivering food and parcels. As soon as they added those, there's no money in moving people, and there never has been. You're not going to profit. Like the railroads of old made their money. Like the freight routes were subsidizing the passenger routes. As soon as local transit started moving to cars, like you know, uh, the jig was up. Especially, you know, especially when you started losing the feeder services of the streetcars and that sort of thing. Um, the reason that we subsidize it is because you can't have a market economy without it. Like people need to be able to move. Like you've got to, and not just like to get to the store, but to sell the things that you have, and to be able to travel. Because if people can't move around, then they're not getting to work. Do you know what I mean? And if people can't move freely from city to city, then one city is going to decline, or one city will prosper at the expense of another one. Like you need these integrated networks if you expect to have this vibrant market economy. Like to me, the entire business model of Uber and Lyft is to just figure out how to get government money, like how to get transit funding to pay for their services. And you see this happening in Texas already, right? Like, is it Arlington, Texas, that got rid of their transit service and replaced it with basically like an Uber like app, where it's dial a ride essentially, but it's with an app. Um, yeah, it's disappointing and kind of disheartening.
Yeah, I agree. Like in the United States, the culture and the attitude towards transit is sometimes it just like brings me down like on my Facebook feed just when you like see like some kind of ad for like expanding transit or something and just seeing like the laugh emoji and all the people who are like I don't want to like take a train or like and for people who've never experienced good transit, people who lack the imagination to believe in it, I don't maybe I sometimes I feel like ignorance is truly bliss because as someone who understands transportation planning and that the things that happen in Europe when people go and then they come back and they just think, oh, that could never happen here, you know,
Yeah,
but it
but
could
yeah,
if we make
but
changes.
but it does happen here. Right? Like I
And
when I lived in California, I used to encounter that all the time. Like people would people would talk about Europe when they talked about transit or like trains, and I'm like, we already have that in the U.S., right? And people would look at me like I was crazy, like, or they would just kind of like wave it away, like, yeah, yeah, sure, whatever. But it's better in Europe, um, which is true, right? But because they pay for it, um, like they're subsidizing it more heavily, or they're just, you know, they don't put as much money into airports as we do, and that money is going more towards like, you know, regional and national rail networks. It's not like Boston or New York or DC don't exist, and that they aren't all connected um, by fast rail. And I think that's another point too, especially like, just talking about California and California high speed rail. Like trains don't need to go 220 miles an hour to be useful. Right? They just need to be faster than what they are. Like it shouldn't take 7 hours to take the train from LA to San Francisco. Like, yeah, 2.5 hours is great, but 4 hours would also be great. Because it's not like it's not the end to end. It's all the stuff in between.
in between. Yeah, that's where you get the laugh emojis when they talk about like a new proposed route from like Chicago to Los Angeles or something. People or from like Atlantic City to Los Angeles. And people are like, oh, how long's that gonna take? It's not for people who are going from point A
Yeah,
to point B. It's
yeah,
the in
exactly. It's all the
between.
stuff in between. Even on Acela, right? When you look at the ridership stats, it's not like, yeah, um, New York is the anchor, right? But it's not it's not even 50% of boardings. It's the biggest source of ridership, but because it's the biggest city. But when you start adding up all of the Wilmingtons and the Trentons and the New Carrollton and all that stuff, you wind up with a lot of people on the train. Um, it's you're not linking those endpoints. It's all of the cities in between, and all of the trip pairs, all of the city pairs that you're putting together. You're talking like, I mean, just from Boston to DC, you've got like over 100 city pairs that people can be going from and to. Um, yeah, it's definitely a silly argument.
And the magic of being able to get off of a train and just get places without driving. So many Americans have never experienced that before. So even when you talk about like in Florida, when you talk about a train and people are like, well, they think park and ride because that's what so much of Sunrail's infrastructure is. They think, okay, when I get there, I'm going to have to rent a car because they're not used to getting from anything without a car. But the other thing I noticed about the Sun Belt is walking has a negative connotation if you're talking about walking outside of an amusement park. Like typically, when people are walking on the side of a road, it's because their
Mhm.
car broke down and they're stranded. And it wasn't
Yeah,
a planned thing. It was unexpected. It
yeah.
might have been raining. Why would you want walkability? I hate walking.
Well, just, I mean, so much of it is inhospitable. I mean, like where I live, there you see. I mean, I don't know. It's the end of July. It's so hot out. Um, you don't see a ton of people walking around in the middle of the afternoon, but mornings and evenings, you see it. But I guess my point there is that so much of where you would see people walking are just in really inhospitable places. Like on East Colonial, or on even on I'm trying to think of some other, like, on Mills, or where you actually there is quite a bit of pedestrian traffic, and that road is a nightmare. I mean, it's a U.S. highway. It's really difficult for the city to do anything about because they don't have control over it, and FDOT doesn't care because they're just focused on throughput. But um, yeah, they're just not. You've got people going 40, 50 miles an hour, like 3 feet from where you're walking. Who wants to do that? And there's no dignity in that.
Our infrastructure influences our culture and the way we think and interact with other people, the way we perceive other people, you know. Like if you live in a region where walking is a miserable experience like that, when someone says, I walked here, you get raised eyebrows like why? Which is so unfortunate. I remember feeling, and even the land uses when your city is built with so many drive-throughs where, they have no walk up anything.
I Yeah, I was this was a couple of years ago, but we were going to Chipotle for lunch, and the drive through, the line was like wrapped around the building, and the
Hmm.
people I was with were like just pulled into the drive through without even thinking about it. And I
Yeah.
said, I'm gonna go inside. And they stayed in the
Oh,
car. And I was done with my food before they, they were through the line. Like I got my food and I ate it.
yeah.
um, it was like it was about 20 minutes. Yeah, it was ridiculous. But that's that's like the
It makes me sad. It
yeah.
makes me sad that this is how we live here, and I feel privileged having grown up in a region where you could walk to so much, and I never thought anything of it. I never thought anything of living in Philly and just having trains and buses everywhere. I wasn't even in the city. I grew up in Levittown, and my mom would commute into Center City for work, and she would take SEPTA on the Trenton line, the former
Mhm.
R7, and that was just normal. And I remember just being amazed when I would go down, like join her for like take your kid to work day or something, and just seeing all the people walking around was just that was really it was mind blowing to me, but it was also normal
Yeah.
because he couldn't walk anywhere in Levittown. But to see places where everyone is walking, like you could go get lunch and just walk, that was just mind blowing. And
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and I mean a lot of those environments like Center City or most of Manhattan, the reason that they are the way that they are is because all of those people are coming in during the day from the suburbs. You know what I mean? Like all of those amenities exist because you're basically doubling or tripling your daytime population um,
mhm,
through all of these, um, all the buses, all the trains, the subways, whatever. Um, you're sort of you're concentrating employment and activity and retail, and because it's self reinforcing. Another good segue there. Sorry. Oh, and before I forget, yeah, because you mentioned this earlier about people not being able to get their heads around what you do when you get there if you take the train somewhere. And I've always thought to myself, well, what do you do when you get off a plane? Like, oh, rent a car. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Like you go to 30th Street Station and there's a whole separate section for with rental car counters. There's like a whole downstairs with rental cars, just like you would see at an airport. I mean, you don't have to do that. You can get it on a different train, or you can walk across the street to the L or the trolleys or whatever. But um, I'm trying to think. Only the smallest of Amtrak stations that I've gone to don't have a rental car counter, or even if they don't have one, you can still arrange for a car to be dropped off for you. It's just, um, yeah, I think Amtrak does themselves a lot of disservices, but that's one of them, where they don't advertise that more directly. Like, hey, you don't have to drive 800 miles to get here. You could take the train and then rent a car. Um, wow. Um, but yeah, I mean, like that's a cultural thing. I don't know how much advertising is gonna fix that. But yeah, did you see the article that I sent the zoning abolitionist, uh, Jeff Speck?
I've read his work, but I didn't see the article.
Um, yeah, so he's like another new urbanist. Um, I guess he started his career at DPZ, and he's I was reading that interview with him, and it's talking about how we should get rid of zoning and just use form-based code, right? Which I find really frustrating because you're just the effect, the end result is the same. You're just calling it a different thing, right? It's semantics. It's not um, you still have FAR, you still have setbacks, you still have a use table. You haven't really changed. You haven't really changed anything. You're just your your orientation is form forward, and and you're you know instead of use forward, you're putting form front and center, but you still have a use table. You've just made the shape of the buildings more important. Which, look, I like it. I appreciate it. I think it's a good idea, but I wouldn't say that it's not zoning. You know what I mean? Like, someone's still going to ask you, "Hey, what's the zoning?" And you're going to give them the answer. It may be a transect, but it's still, you're still answering the question of what is this zoning? What can I do here? You still, it's not like you've gotten rid of the rules. And in the interview, he was asked, can you name a place that doesn't have zoning? And I
They say
think he
Houston,
pointed, yeah, and then which is, first of all, not entirely true. Like,
right?
they use different mechanisms to get to zoning.
Mhm.
Um,
Right.
and then the interviewer asked, "Well, has that produced desired outcomes?" And he said, "Absolutely not." Um, but yeah, and there's, yeah, there's also, like, saying that, like, essentially taking the position that, like, zoning is this uniquely American thing, and that um, it was created to restrict supply. Um, when none of those things are true, right? Like, it was a German creation that spread all around the world, and everybody's dealing with it. Um, what was the other? Oh, that basically, like, that zoning was created for, like, the wealthy or the upper middle class to protect what they had, right? Which is also not true. And this isn't like, I don't, I just, like, I really don't understand people sometimes. Like, um where it takes very little, like, research to realize that this is not true. um like, just cursor like a cursory review of the literature, like, these things were developed because, like, to protect the working class, not to protect the wealthy. Like, you're not gonna create some utopia by getting rid of zoning. People with money will always have the money to remove themselves from whatever it is, to separate themselves from everyone else. Like, the whole reason that we have zoning is because people were living in awful tenements with no windows, you know,
Yeah.
right next to,
Next to big
you know,
factories melting.
yeah, it wasn't like the wealthy were already living in Chestnut Hill. You know what I mean? They were already living on the main line in 1890. Like, they didn't need to be protected from factories, or noxious uses, or even, like, having to live around poor people. Um, they did that for themselves. The zoning was specifically to protect people
Middle
with,
class. Mm.
and the working class, for, yeah, 100%. Um, I um, yeah, it's crazy. And, like, and doing away with those things are not going to it's not going to make life worse for people with money, and it's not going to make life better for people without money. um, Even if that's what you actually accomplish. But what they're saying, like, "Oh, let's get rid of zoning," no, yeah, that's not what you're doing. You're just changing the name of it, and trying to feel better about it. um, but it's yeah, I don't know how much you deal with zoning on the day to day, but
Very, very little for me.
mhm.
More, more comp plan, future land use. I'm
Yeah.
very long range functions kind of only, almost exclusively long range planning.
Yeah, it sounds like your work is more on the academic side than
Mhm.
on the day-to-day side, where I think for me it's a little bit of both. Like, we still deal with permits, we still review applications, in between doing the comp planning work. But, like I said, we're not doing the data and analysis for the comp plan, so it makes our lives a lot easier. Yeah. um Anything else you wanted to cover? You want to
We didn't talk about
throw some shade at Urbanist YouTube?
I have plenty of complaints about the the YouTubers who aren't planners in real life but play one on TV. Not that their not that their content is like without use or doesn't benefit the planning community. I think it does have merit in that it contributes to the discussion and comes up with some unique ideas. Um, what I what I don't like is all of the things that they miss, um, that in planning you really shouldn't overlook. Because when you when you are a YouTuber and you have a planning channel, you get to talk about what you want to talk about and focus on what you want to focus on. But as a planner, you have to look at the whole picture. And what happens when we cherry pick things, it, you know, you can deliver a very inaccurate portrayal of the real work. And they develop large followings who consume that cherry picked material, and they get a very small glimpse of what planning is, but think that they know what planning is.
Yeah, yeah, because right, because there's the theory, right, and then there's best practices, and there's a bunch of daylight between theory and best practice, and on top of that, you're there are constituencies that who we are working for. Like there's a politician who has a district and people live in it, and people want things. People don't understand why there's so much traffic. Why don't you just widen this road? Just one more lane. Um, there are, it's not as easy as just showing those people a video. Like, the people who are saying just make the road wider. That'll solve our traffic problem. Um, you know, you don't you don't change anybody's mind in an hour and a half town hall. Um, and it's and there are certain people you're just never going to change their mind. And then so you're dealing with that, and then you're also dealing with the politicians and the mayors who are who are running those districts, who have their own opinions, um, and may or may not trying to make a name for themselves. You know, um, yeah. If it was as easy as it was on YouTube, the world would be
But
perfect.
it reminds me so much of like crime dramas that like as we talked about in our last podcast together, my undergrad and my first career was criminal justice work. And in undergrad, so many people in the intro course, when the professor said, what made you choose criminal justice? People were like, oh, I really like Law and Order was like the number one answer. So like, I also have concerns that followers of the YouTube channels will get the wrong idea about planning because that's not where my interest in planning didn't come from any of that. It was the whole YouTube network I didn't really discover until like the planning circles, I didn't really discover until later. But for people who are like that gets them interested in planning, I have concerns that they'll go into the field what it really is about. You know,
Yeah. Hmm.
I just don't know when I watch their content. I feel like it should come
Yeah,
with a
it's a good
disclaimer.
yeah, it's a good way to get burnt out really quickly, because
Mhm.
you go in a little too idealistic and a little too like, well, I have all the answers, and I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna fix everything without understanding the political aspect of it.
Hmm.
And there's so much, like, because it's not like we don't know what should happen.
Right.
But
The idealist.
there's so much, yeah, there's so much distance between that and the political reality that it's I don't know, it's nice to want things, but you have to live in the real world at a certain point. And I think like the the change that people want to see really comes with the small stuff at the local level. Like the bike ped stuff. That's the easiest infrastructure to change. And once you get a little bit of it done, people start seeing the benefit. You know.
One of my colleagues told me that when he's been a planner for like maybe 6 years now, and I
Hmm.
just finished my first year. And one of the things he shared with me was that he said after he finished grad school and got to the field, he said there was a phase early on when he got really discouraged and really disheartened because and disillusioned because he went into the field wanting to make the world a better place. And the realities and dealing with the NIMBYism and the politics and the red tape really that was a real struggle for him early on in his career. And my response to that was that's how I was after undergrad with criminal justice. And I burned out pretty early on because I wanted to make the world a better place. But with planning, I, I planning was my minor in undergrad, and it was my other love. But my concern was it wouldn't hold my attention to do the 4 years of work you have to do for undergrad. But this time, after finishing the master's, I genuinely feel like the number one reason I'm in planning is because I'm in an environment where I feel like I'm with colleagues who understand the way I think, and I see the infrastructure in the world around us, the built environment, having such a core be as a core contributor to our societal problems, and the ability to ask questions that non-planners just seem to not consider, like why is this road so wide? Why do all of these houses have off-street parking, but everyone parks in the street? Like things like that. Other people, if you ask them that, they just be like, who cares? Or they'll come up with a reason that's just off the cuff. But like planners ask these questions. I just feel like I found an environment where people understand me better. And it's like everything else is just it's not really what why I'm a planner. It's just I need to be in a place where I'm understood and I have I'm part of a community. I feel like planning is such a cool place if that's
Yeah.
how you are. I feel like planners aren't made, they're born.
Oh, you sorry. You just reminded me of something. The because you mentioned master's degree, right? And so many job descriptions you'll see require it, right? Or they require some combination of degree and experience. And there was one job in Union City, New Jersey, where they're hiring. I don't know what the title was. It was principal planner or chief planner, whatever, planning manager. Um, they wanted 8 years of experience, a master's degree, AICP, and there was some other certification that I can't remember right now. And the the pay range was $70,000 to $80,000. And keep in mind, this is North Jersey. This is like, a 20-minute commute from Manhattan. Um, $70,000 for to be an experienced professional with a master's degree and multiple certifications. Just absolutely ridiculous. Um, and you know, because of that, it's just crazy that the pay here is better than in New York. Um, and because of that, you've got people who still want to they still have a passion for it. They have all this education and training. What are they going to do? They're going to go work in the private sector, and and you've got all your talent in the private sector, um, and y- y- you know, and so much of what the private sector is driving is what the how can I put this? It's like the companies that are building the infrastructure. How can they make money? And there's like this conduit between those infrastructure companies and the private sector planning consultants that are you know getting us 1 mile of subway for like $7 billion. Like that's what's happening right? That's where, because when I was talking about the waste, um, at in building new infrastructure like with SEPTA or New Jersey Transit or whatever, and like how I'm on the fence about fixing that problem. I'm not saying that it's the transit agency's fault. I'm saying that like it's a structural problem, and we have to figure out how to fix that before we start throwing more money at things. Because there's no reason that you can't bump the salaries up enough to get that private sector talent back into the public sector where you can control projects from beginning to end and not have to subcontract out the engineering and project management and all that stuff. Like there's plenty of experienced people. If you pay them what they're worth, they will come work for you, and they're not going to be using their talents to figure out how to um, maximize change orders to rip off the transit agency. You know, they're going to be using their talent to do the opposite. To protect the agency from change order excesses and all the other stuff that goes on. Um, yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, that's all I got. Any last words?
Nope, just a pleasure to be back with you here, and thanks
Yeah,
for having me. Thanks for all the work you do.
absolutely. Thanks, Austin. And well, I don't know. I don't want to plan now because I don't know. I don't know what the future is for Planner of the Day. This is something that I wanted to do like monthly, um, but the this is the easiest thing that I do in terms of editing. Like it's really like I could get this. This will be out next weekend. Um, but the other stuff I'm working on just takes forever. Like it takes me 2 to 3 weeks to edit. It's really a drag. Um, I'm gonna we'll see how things go over the next like 6 months, but I would like to do this once a month. Um, but right now, no one's watching it. um,
These are those videos that'll pick up later when the other ones start getting more views.
when I quit doing it, then people will start watching it.